On this episode of the show, I have with me Jason Wells. He's the head of engineering at BrowserBase. We're going to be talking about fostering a high-performing culture. We're going to talk to Jason about what that means. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence tooling, having a blameless culture and kind of moving away from some of the old stuff that had been plaguing the industry. And we're going to talk to Jason a little bit about his background. He has a unique path into technology. He did actually leave technology before coming back, and we'll talk to him about what he learned during that time. Jason, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Awesome. All right. What does BrowserBase do before we dive into this episode?
BrowserBase is a backend developer platform for headless browser automation. And partly that's people who are automating browsers to do tasks like, it could be as simple as web scraping, but more typically it's something, what we're seeing people do now is using web agents with the platform. So they're starting to do more ambitious work. And basically what we do is we operate the headless browser backend, which is a much tougher problem than people tend to think. So we've got customers that go to, scale to thousands of concurrent browser sessions. So that's part of what the platform supports.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So this episode, we're going to be talking about culture. We're going to be talking about how do you actually enable and foster that high performing culture? So I guess let's define, in your opinion, what are the ingredients for a good culture?
So I believe very strongly that the best engineering is done by engineers who love their jobs, who want to come to work, are excited about what they're doing, want to make the product better. Have an attitude of ownership around it. They're just very passionate about what they do and they love what they're doing. So for me, that actually elevates culture, the engineering culture, to a really high position of prominence. If you want the best output, I think you want to create the most favorable environment for the people that are creating that output. And what I've observed in my experiences is that the culture piece of it tends to get glossed. It's something that, companies will put out a value statement. Typically, it's not taken as anything other than sort of like polite bromides. Probably has very little to do with people's actual experiences at the company. Here, it's actually really different. This is something I take very seriously, and I've had extensive conversations with Paul Klein, the founder here, about how we could implement the best possible engineering culture here. And essentially what, at a very high level, the most important thing is to try to create an environment where it's safe to make mistakes. It's safe to be ignorant of something, to not feel like you're going to have to pay a price in terms of being blamed for something or being assigned fault. Like it's possible to take ownership and responsibility for something and be culpable for making a mistake without it being about a blame dynamic. And I think that dynamic is that's one of the key failure modes with most engineering cultures that I've seen. Because they don't really take that into account or take it seriously, it creates an incentive for people to hide when they don't know something, or project or deflect if they did something that was a mistake, try to make it somebody else's fault. So what we like, the most foundational thing really is an environment where we can have high trust. And I think that's where trust begins, is when people feel safe. So the culture piece is really crucial, because as we grow, BrowserBase is growing very rapidly. The engineering operation here has quadrupled in complexity over the past 3 months. So how do we make sure that people are, doing their best work and working well together? I think you have to have a foundation of trust. And it takes a lot to actually, you have to have some guts to dare to trust other people, especially if you haven't really got a working relationship with them yet. So the foundational value that we have is boldly dare to trust. We want a culture of openness where, trust is something that you can dare to extend. Likewise, you can reasonably expect it from other people. You're assuming best intent from like the starting posture. And when you do that, it's possible to really move forward in a way that's highly effective. So even though these are like classically considered soft skills, they're not really considered hard engineering skills. They actually can be more definitive, in my experience, to the success of projects and products and companies than the hard skills can be.
Let me ask you a question about I guess culture, and I appreciate how you see it, and the definition I think is very clear. I think there is a view of culture that is unidirectional, meaning this is the company's culture, and everyone there consumes it. And I think either for a lot of places, either you like it or you don't like it, and that's one of the big reasons why people might or might not stay. It is a lot of times unidirectional. I view it as almost an employer employee, not a contract. I hate to use that word, but there is an understanding of what is expected, and you fit in with what is expected. There's molds, there's standards, there's trust to be comfortable. There's all these different components within culture. From an employee standpoint, I guess how do we incorporate? And you can't tailor it to every employee. I know that as well. We can't have, you have 500 employees, you can't have 500 different versions of culture, but obviously you have to have some kind of feedback mechanism to bring those viewpoints to understand what's working and not working for the people who are actually working in that culture. What have you seen work for that feedback mechanism?
Okay. So one of the things that I do with anybody that I'm interviewing for a position here is I'll do a culture fit as part of the first screen that I do. And I want to see like if this is the kind of person who would excel in this environment, because this is a pretty, it's a challenging environment. I feel blessed to be working with the team I have here, by the way. I just want to give a shout out to the BrowserBase team. These are incredible people. It's really amazing to work with them. It's one of the best groups of people I've ever worked with. So culture hasn't really been a struggle because I feel like there's an innate high level of intelligence and decency and kindness that I encounter here. So what I try to stress whenever I'm doing the culture fit phase, talking to someone who's new, is tell them a lot of stuff like what I just told you. Basically, it's like, here's how, these are like, we take values seriously here. This is something that's really important. And by implication, like if you're not on board with that, you probably wouldn't be happy here. Like this is something that I present not only as an invitation and something that might be appealing for candidates, but also this is who we are. This is how we roll. And, it's not everybody's cup of tea, and that's no harm, no foul. But this is how it is here. Like some of these expectations are pretty bold. I mean, like it's, a lot of these things are very personal. Like I'm inviting people to be authentic. Well, what is that like? What does it mean to do that, right? Like you have to have some sense of self-introspection about what actually is real for you. And that's not always really self-evident. And not everybody has that kind of skill. Like I didn't have that skill when I was younger. So part of this is kind of educational, or it's sort of immersion into an environment that might be unfamiliar. But also it's about having a lot of communication about what we would like to do here. I put a lot of emphasis into inviting people in the team to have a stake in what we're trying to do. I'm not a fan of just dreaming up something and then dropping it on people. What I like to do instead is to provide some sort of framing of norms that I think would be appropriate here, and to see if like what buy-in looks like. And then if we've got alignment on this, then we move forward with it. And so far, that's been effective here. So there's not really a situation where something should be getting dropped on anybody. And also, just as part of the picture here, I'm not a big fan of hierarchy, and I don't care a lot about like titles, aside from to the extent that they clarify what you can expect someone to do. But basically, the way I look at it is that we're all grown-ups here. We're all adults. We may have different roles in the organization. We may have different skills and levels of experience, different talents and capabilities, but we're all grown-ups that are basically making an agreement to work together, right? So agreements are the key. I feel really strongly that if you want to have something that's rooted in authenticity, it's got to be something where you walk in agreeing to what you're doing. It's like you're totally happy with what's going on here, and if not, don't agree to it. And in order to agree to something, you have to know what you really want, and that's also not always really obvious. So I think that there's some skills that people tend to need to level up here because this thinking isn't really, I haven't encountered this attitude, frankly, at any of the companies I've worked at in the past. And in fact, actually, when I started thinking about this before I started working here, I wasn't 100% confident that this wasn't too utopian to actually implement. I thought, well, let's give it a shot, right? Because this is the kind of place I wanted to work. Like that was sort of like what I thought. That was my starting stance for all of this. Was like, what if I want to go back to being a software engineer? What would be the most ideal environment for me to operate in? Like, what would be the dream environment? And that's what that coupled with having some understanding of emotional awareness or emotional adeptness, dealing with your emotions adeptly. Like, I think that that's really a big part of what woke me up to what could be possible here. So that's what we try to build.
Fantastic. You mentioned obviously, the culture there, and we were going to also touch on some of your background, because I think when we first spoke, you kind of walked me through your background, and I really felt that your background influences some of your views, and I love the audience to kind of hear about that, because obviously, from what you told me, you started your first job at 19, self-taught. So tell us a little bit about a quick snapshot of that background would be fantastic.
Yeah, let me see if I can make it quick. So I got into computers very organically. I had an Atari 400 when I was a little kid. And I started teaching myself BASIC by getting magazines that had listings in BASIC of little video games that you could type in and play. And I sort of learned BASIC by seeing like how that stuff worked. And then later, I got my first real job as a software engineer at a startup in St. Louis, where I grew up. And they gave me a wonderful opportunity because they didn't have funding, so they couldn't afford a software engineer, and I didn't have any experience. And so basically, I was just like, hey, if you can let me help you out here, I'll do what I can, I'll do the best work I can, and this is an environment where I can learn, and I'll get better, I hope, and we'll just take it from there. And that's how I got my start. So I never got a computer science degree. I just launched into it. I got thrown one of my first projects at the first company was I was doing some work with Oracle databases. This is back in the days of like Oracle 7, and basically they dropped the Oracle concepts manual onto the table in front of me, and it was like a 900-page book, and it's prior to actually doing anything with Oracle. Like that's just the conceptual layout of what an Oracle database is. So that kind of work I really grew in that environment, and I love startups because almost everything is greenfield. So like if I can think of something that could be better, generally the response is go do it. And I just really love that level of empowerment. And so I got to experience that too when I was still a teenager. So that's how I got started, sort of trying to abbreviate a long story. I started getting in management when I worked at a company in San Diego called Semantic Research. We did a lot of work with the military and intelligence community to build software that would represent knowledge in structures called semantic networks that allowed analysts to be able to understand information differently than if it were, for example, linear in the form of text in a document. And you could sort of explore along the graph in whatever direction actually mattered to you. And there was a lot of interest after 9/11 in this kind of technology. So we started collaborating. The company I was at, we started collaborating with them, and my role became very research oriented. Frankly, it was really this really awesome dynamic of, we'd work with one of the three-letter agencies. They would have a project in mind that they thought our software could help with. And then I talked to them and we'd talk about what integration would look like with their tooling or some feature that they wanted to add. And it was a cyclical process, and it was very creative, and it was a lot of fun. As that project became bigger, that's when I had my first need to hire somebody. And I started moving into management at that point. And I really loved that because management felt like a force multiplier. It was like I alone could do a certain thing, right? Like I alone could maybe build a trail through the wilderness. But if I have a team of people, I can build like a road. And if I had teams of people, I might be able to build like a highway, right? Like you can scale up your ambitions of what you're trying to achieve if you can provide leadership to a group of people who also want the same thing. And when I started really playing with that dynamic, I realized that there was so much more to be done. It really broadened my perspective beyond just looking at the computing aspect. And that's where I've inhabited ever since. Like when I later in my career, I joined Twilio. I came in as a senior director, and I built an organization with a few teams in it. And that's where I got a lot of my experience with working with a highly available developers backend platform. So that's like Twilio. That my experience at Twilio is most similar to what I'm doing in a way here. Um, so after Twilio, I took a break from tech. My intention at the time was to leave it forever because I was exhausted with a lot of the hard experiences I'd had, and I was ready to focus on other aspects of my life. So I disappeared from tech for about 6 years, and I went on a pretty incredible personal journey those years. That's hard to summarize, but I guess like the biggest theme would be self-actualization, and then also trying to find ways to actualize myself into the world. Like I thought of it as like sort of radiant actualization, like coming from myself. Like what are the verbs that I'm putting out into the world, and what kind of projects that I could do that would be most in alignment with those types of like impulses that I've got for what I want to do. So I spent a lot of time doing different kinds of projects. I traveled. I helped a friend start a hybrid profit nonprofit company. I went to Antarctica. Like I did a bunch of different. I built community with folks that I care about. A lot of different projects that I just felt were important. That didn't like. It was great to be able to focus on things that didn't require getting a paycheck for it. Like I could just focus on what I actually thought was important. So that's what I did for that interval until the AI boom came along. And I had been interested in AI since I was a little kid. And I remember the AI winter of the 80s where it looked like it just wasn't going anywhere. Like I could tell that AI really was going to be something, but it was like it didn't seem to be moving for most of the years that I was paying close attention. So I just let it go. And then fast forward to more recent times, I built the data science team at Twilio, and those guys really woke me up again to what was up in the machine learning space and a lot of the potential that was starting to rise with like deep learning. It was, the game was changing. And then fast forward to, with the current generative AI boom, I was dazzled by, frankly, just blown away by some of the stuff that I could see a computer could now do, and the implications of it really seemed breathtaking. Like I feel like AI is an incredibly big deal. It might be the most impactful invention ever. I think, and I think we're in the really early stages, so it may not look like that, but this is a big deal. So when I saw this boom start, I got really sucked into it. And then I reconnected with Paul. And Paul was someone that I had originally hired as an intern at Twilio when I was a manager there. And after I left, we stayed in contact and we became friends. And we just have dinner every now and then and just catch up. And I just sort of watched his career flourish. He's one of those amazing people that I've worked with. He was an incredible person to hire. It was just so great having him on the team right out of the gate, even when he was really new to this whole thing. He's one of the fastest, smartest people I've ever met. And and I knew that he was going to get into some kind of entrepreneurial mode at some point in his career. So I just gave him the benefit of my experience, whatever benefit it has for him, and we just stayed in touch. And then we met to talk about his plan for BrowserBase. We had dinner 2 Januaries ago, and that's when he showed me, basically he sent me the blog post, and we talked about it. And I had Paul and I had been talking blue sky about maybe working together one of these days for a while, and nothing was really coming of it. But with the AI piece happening, that reactivated my more active interest in tech. And then Paul actually starting an AI infra startup like that, once I went through the idea with him and just sort of stress tested it, and it survived easily, then I was like, well, how can I help? So this is why he brought me in, is to do this.
Absolutely. Yeah. You obviously, get the way you started in the industry, and not having a traditional path, not having some of those traditional tools, you made your way, and obviously you've been doing it for quite a while. One thing we were going to talk about, and I think maybe highlights some of the path that you in the journey that you took, was you mentioned you took about 6 years away from technology. In that time, the emotional intelligence, you spent some time on that to level up and really improve on some of those facets. Tell us what you did. What did you do in terms of leveling up those type of things?
So part of there was a lot of stuff that it's really hard to summarize what I did for those 6 years because there was just so many things, so many amazing things. But one of the most amazing things is the opportunity for personal growth that I had in that area. My upbringing, my family, like I feel like my first teachers, like the people in my family, my closest friends when I was growing up, like it was a loving environment. But I feel like the power was really on the intellectual or cerebral front. Most of my family, like they've had academic success in excess of mine, and like the conversations, like at dinner table, like conversations would be like over abstruse topics of philosophy because that's something that I feel really passionate about, and I shared with my dad. But we didn't really like. I don't feel like we had a lot. I didn't feel like I picked up on anyway a lot of innate capability or wisdom around emotional well-being or self-awareness or how to relate to one another, like how you deal with somebody that you don't disagree with. Like the classic scenario that I've encountered, and I've seen this countless times in engineering cultures too, is two people disagree. They view each other in this kind of like adversarial light, and since they both believe that they own objective reality, that means that they both each think that they own objective truth about reality. And since they're not in agreement, that means somebody's wrong and somebody's right. And the only way to resolve that is like a duel over like some kind of argument. And then the argument, somebody feels like they're a victor, somebody feels like they lost. In that situation, people feel resentful, they don't feel heard. I don't think you get good outcomes that way, frankly, not usually. So I didn't know any better though. Basically I didn't have any tooling for how do you get around that, right? Like how do you actually relate to somebody whenever there's some kind of disagreement and you both vehemently feel you're right and it's something that you both really care about, let's say. So later, like in this interval where I was unemployed, I got exposed to a lot of thinking that was really revolutionary to me. And one of the ideas was the idea that everyone can have their own truth. Like I can have my narrative or story about reality, and you might have yours. And there's probably going to be a lot of overlap. And the union of all of the people having their views of what is true and what isn't is essentially what I think we mean when we talk about a consensus view of reality. And yet, it's absolutely possible and extremely common for people to vehemently disagree about basic fundamentals about the nature of anything in the world, right? Like there's all kinds of disagreement. So it's not rational in my mind to assume that like I have access to the truth trademark and you don't, right? Like that's an attitude of superiority that's unwarranted by anything prima facie. So instead, it's possible to, if somebody's coming at you and they've got something where they totally disagree with you and they might be not really communicating very politely about it, let's say, it's possible to not take it personally. Like even if they're attacking you, like literally like unfairly attacking you, you do not have to take it personally. It's possible to respond with something like, oh, wow, you may be having a really bad experience with me here. Like, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize I was coming across like that. Or, it might be something more about listening. Like, if somebody's really, and I don't know, let's say that somebody's really in opposition to something I care about, and I don't know why, I don't understand what their motivation is. The first thing I try to do when I'm being my best self is to open with curiosity. Like, I want to start with, okay, like, I hear what you're saying, and I don't agree, and I'd like to understand where the disconnect is. Can you give me an idea of what's important to you here? Like, what's your motivation? Because maybe we're not focused on the same thing, and maybe we could be. Maybe there's some common ground here. And if we just like understand where we're each coming from, then we can find it. There's just so much tooling here that like that's why I look at it is that the emotional piece was always present within myself, and I think for most people. But I think that I felt under-equipped to actually express it and to use it in my life. It just wasn't part of the picture at the schools I went to. Like when I got my philosophy degree, that stuff never came up. Pretty ironic, I think. So when I started picking these up, it really was revolutionary. So I wanted to, like in the context of the culture at BrowserBase, I really wanted to see if I could convey some of the stuff that I learned that was so revolutionary for me in a way that'd be beneficial to the people here and to the business. So as I was learning pieces like what I described, there's a bunch of other things I could dive into. But I had a lot of exposure to people who were like there were books, there were sort of notable figures like someone like Brene Brown, for example. Like I've got friends who have done a lot of work in this area, and as I had this openness, like there was so much more to learn. So I've been trying to bring that to the table here, and I feel really blessed that I've had this opportunity. I think if I don't think that most people get the chance to learn what I've learned, and it's tragic because I think that a lot of this stuff is actually, it could arguably be more impactful to someone's outcomes in life than anything else they do.
Absolutely. I guess one question as a follow up to what you apply now. So obviously you've talked to us a little bit about building trust, the emotional intelligence side of things, moving away from a culture of blame. Now that you're back into technology and you're bringing all these experiences into the fold, when you approach managing your team now, what are a couple takeaways if somebody hasn't gone through this journey? What are a couple of ways or lessons that they can maybe look to apply to improve the emotional intelligence side of things?
What I observe in most really extraordinarily brilliant engineers, like people who are intelligent and ambitious and capable, is that many of them unwittingly carry a kind of shame dynamic within themselves that is tragic, in my opinion, because it's like often people who are really high performers will be their worst critics. Like they will talk to themselves worse than anybody that they would ever talk to. They've never talked to anybody like the way that they treat themselves. And that's really unfortunate. So what I try to do is basically part of it is trying to make a safe space where it's possible to say, like if there's something that comes up, and let's say like I've got someone on my team and they feel really terrible about something that they did, like maybe they did something dumb, whatever. They might feel like really awful about it and like just kicking themselves, and I can tell, right? Like part of this is learning how to read people. And that's like a whole other kind of domain of skills that's in this area. So I try to pay really close attention to what I think is going on for the people on my team. And if I see some kind of like shame-driven dynamic coming up, I try to just like nip it in the bud. Like I want it to be a place where nobody has to even worry about that. Like I just don't, it's not productive. Like saying like, it's my fault and I'm a bad person, I was stupid. Like it's profitless. It's not going to help you. It doesn't help anybody else. It doesn't solve any problems. It just causes suffering within you. So I try to give people permission to like be nice to themselves, like actually be forgiving. Actually, a better word is compassionate. I think it's really important for people to have compassion for themselves. And I try to encourage that attitude. With a lot of the people who are extremely high performers here, one of the phenomena I've encountered here that I haven't seen in my career before is engineers who are so devoted and so focused and have so much excitement and see so much opportunity in front of them that they will work late hours, they will work over the weekends, they'll work all weekend, they'll work like, they work hard, like way, way more than 9 to 5. And, of course that's expected for a little high growth startup, but still, the danger is that if you've really gotten intoxicated with that world, which is super, like, I mean, it is intoxicating, but if you're not careful, you can burn out. And uh, I try to encourage habits that allow for people to give themselves permission to sleep, to take a day or two off, to touch the grass, go home, like, hang out with your friends, your loved ones. Like, it's not, I don't want to discourage people from the kind of hard work that they're doing. That's brilliant. And it's just dazzling, actually. I really, truly cannot believe, like, I come in on Monday and it's like, whoa, like, this is this new thing that you guys built over the weekend. So basically, there's always this impetus for people to work very hard, and I don't want to disrupt that, but I want people to feel like if they're really running, like if they're redlining, it's okay to take a break, rest, like go home. It's all right, So a lot of it is helping people be more compassionate and forgiving, and because like I said, a lot of the high performers just don't have that skill. They may have even been taught that it's not something you should ever allow. Um, so, it's um, I think that those are factors. Also, I think it's also just the kind of tone that you set in the environment. Like, I try to encourage an attitude of friendliness, of like light humor. I think that humor can be really amazing to help people get along and to facilitate a healthy culture. Um, it's it's a lot of different things. I mean, it's hard to really summarize, but I try to just really be attuned to what I think is going on for an individual. The other piece I think also it's probably worth mentioning is that I do not buy the idea really that there are just sort of these stock management tools that you can apply universally to people. The first thing I try to do with someone that I'm managing, someone new to me, is to really understand who they are. And everybody is different. Their personalities are like fingerprints. Everyone is unique in that way. And it requires me to learn who they are in order to be a good manager for them. And a lot of that is, I invite a level of vulnerability. If somebody is, I want people to feel safe talking about whatever they need to talk to with me, because there's important things that I can help with, and there's stuff that I can, there's things that I can facilitate that go beyond just solving, inter-team, organizational issues or solving for some like technical problem. Those are important, of course, but I can do more. And I think that what I try to do is to really create an environment where if anything comes up that they need, like in whatever area, if I can help, I will.
Fantastic. I love the views. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us, I think, some great stories as well. If somebody does want to reach out to you, to connect with you, to ask you a little bit more details on something you mentioned, what's a good way of connecting with you?
Yeah. If anybody wants to reach out from here, my email address at BrowserBase is jason@browserbase.com. Also, I would like to put in a plug. If anybody is watching this and they are a brilliant engineer and they want to work for a really exciting, fast-paced, very successful startup, and they want to be in a culture like what I'm describing, please check out browserbase.com/careers, because we are definitely hiring and I will talk to you. I look at every resume that goes through there.
Fantastic. Jason, definitely will include some of those links in the show notes. Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate this.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for this episode. We'll be back again, different topic, different guests. Until then, two things. One, I think Jason, talked us through his background and walked us through a lot of learnings in terms of having a unique background into the industry. Took some time away. We talked about culture. We talked about a blameless culture and emotional intelligence and how he applies his life lessons into how he manages. So lots of insights. So share this episode with somebody else who might benefit from it. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show is going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.